Well, greetings and hello everybody, and welcome back to this Bond channel some Bond Geek talks about with me, your host. The name's Stevens, Henry Stevens. Everybody, how'd you do? Hope you're all well. Hope you're enjoying a good Bond film, a good Bond book, a good James Bond video game, a good James Bond thing, whatever you fancy and really like about this James Bond franchise and this whole universe that we love. I hope you're enjoying it right now, because today, everybody, we are finally starting the Roger Moore era of James Bond films. Yes, we're going to start off with his first James Bond film, Live and Let Die. What a film to talk about, everybody. What a film to talk about. But before we get on that, everybody, can I just ask very quickly, a bit of house cleaning. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, can I ask, why not? Why are you not subscribed yet? Don't forget, click on the subscribe button down below. Click for the notification bell icon for future updates and videos. And as always, everybody, just a massive thank you from me to you for coming and watching the show, for talking about the movie after I've done my review of it on the Facebook groups, on here, on Instagram. It's always just a pleasure to have a chat with you all the time, everybody. But as I said, everybody, today we're going to talk about the Bond film Live and Let Die, and here is my quick thoughts about it. So, this film, I have to say, it's not one of the most bombastic films. It's actually a very subtle, you could say a very sort of low-key Bond film. The stakes aren't really that high, but even though I wouldn't say this is like maybe one of the all-time great James Bond films, this has been a Bond film that I've always had a real shining to, and I really, really like this Bond film. I think really enough for my own reasons, but we'll get into that, everybody, in a minute and in more detail, because one of the things we always do, as you know, when on this channel, is it's about discussing my personal journey with James Bond, me growing up with Bond, how Bond influenced my life, how it's influenced me in return, and vice versa, and all those sorts of things and my stories with it. And Live and Let Die is, without a doubt, no exception to this rule, because weird enough, Live and Let Die was one of the sort of films I hadn't watched a lot as I was growing up. So what I mean by saying that is, obviously I was collecting all the Bond films, and Live and Let Die was one of the last Bond films I collected. And my history really with Live and Let Die comes from these two books, which is The Essential James Bond and James Bond, The Secret World 007. They were like my Bibles nearly growing up. Nothing against anyone who is religious at all. Me, myself, I am religious. But I read these books cover to cover and again, and I just saw pictures and stories about what Live and Let Die is, and the sort of feeling and what it was all about, and like pictures of, say, Teehee and the Crocodile Farm, etc. So by the time I came to watch it, it was pretty hyped up in my head already. I feel like to say that about it. One thing I also want to say about this film, which I think is a point I didn't really mention in Diamonds Are Forever, but I think it's a good point to bring in now, is during the 1970s, the Bond films, instead of just being Bond films, they sort of tried to be like Bond films within different genres. So you could say that, as I said, Diamonds Are Forever was very much the American Bond. It was very much trying to sort of, if you will, replicate the American action films with the over-the-top carnage and all that sort of things like that. You know, really the American movie. Live and Let Die is very much, if you will, a sort of spy film within the blaxploitation genre. Now, hands up, I'm going to say this right now, I have not really seen that much of black exploitation cinema. It's on my list of more stuff to see. And if you've, by the way, I should say, if you've got any recommendations for good black exploitation films, please comment down below and give me a list, because I'll love to watch so many. But, this film is sort of set within a bit of that genre. It was very popular at the time. Tom Mankiewicz said, it was a very risque book to do. Certainly with the time period where it was made, and I have to say I agree with him, but I think they handled it with grace. You can have very much different opinion to me on that if you wish, but again, for me, this film sort of promoted a lot of great black actors that I saw in this film for the first time, and then followed them throughout different parts of their careers and watched other films that they were in just purely because they were in Live and Let Die and wanted to see them in other things, such as Yaphet Kotto and Julius Harris, who obviously played Dr. Kananga, the bad guy, and his henchman Teehee. I keep mentioning them a lot because they are important things to me in this film. But, I wouldn't have watched as much filmography of theirs if it wasn't for this film and so many other black actors that are in here. So from that, I think that's a plus as well. But look, everybody, let's just get into this film in a bit more detail, because I've been rattling on about my history of it. But, that was really my history of it. But there are bad points to this film, everybody. And there are. One of the most notable ones a lot of people talk about is it has a very, very weak pre-title sequence. Bond isn't in this pre-title sequence. I have nothing against that, but it's... Live and Let Die is quite a bit like a carbon near copy of Dr. No. Still set in a sort of tropical place. It was filmed in Jamaica. Obviously, in the film, it's Saint Monique. You got a, Bond not being really much at the beginning. You've got certain key elements and things that they're trying to replicate when it comes to Live and Let Die with Dr. No. And I can understand why. It's sort of like going back to the basics. And from now on, we'll see this a lot, everybody, actually. Whenever a new Bond is introduced, they sort of go back to the core basics of James Bond, which is, again, it's a really good thing. But it's one of the things you could say this film, it's very much... at times too similar to Dr. No as well. And the other thing I feel I should say about it, and I mentioned this earlier, it has a very, if you will, mediocre start to the film. When I mean that, I'm not saying it's bad by any stretch of the imagination, but, there's no big volcano layers, there's no big earth-shattering evil plot. It's just a drug smuggling operation. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good story, and they use it to its fullest. But it's not essentially anything, I think, by this point in the film series, it's sort of like a massive step down. And that can be said a bad thing, because when I think of watching Live and Let Die, I'm watching it more for the content that's in it, not for really the villain's plan. But that's really the bad points I feel about this movie. It's just those sort of points go away. But the fact of the matter is, as I mentioned, the content in this film is incredible. Jamaica standing in for Saint Monique looks unbelievable. New York actually looks great. From complaining about Diamonds Are Forever being in America, Bond in New York actually really, really, I thought, worked. There's a lovely little action sequence in it, but every time they're in New York, it's really interesting. From the funerals, you saw in precise things, that was really cool. The Philip of Soul sequences, everything about New York just in this film for me works really well. It's in there enough without it being sort of overstaying its welcome, and the main focus is obviously in Jamaica, Saint Monique. But everybody, right off the bat, here and now, we got to talk about the Crocodile Farm, because that to me is the highlight of the movie, without a shadow of a doubt. Again, it's one of the most amazing sequences I've ever seen in film. The whole bit from Bond being introduced there, all the way to him stuck on the island, to his escape, which leads into that massive, awesome boat chase, which is incredible. But again, one thing I love about the Bond franchise, and it comes up a lot, is they always do the stunts for real. And in this film, it shows, with the actual guy jumping on the backs of crocodiles to get to the other side. The fact that that stunt was real, and you can go online, everybody, and I've probably got a clip of it now, you can see, of the different attempts done doing it. It's just incredible. I love it. And the stories behind what Roger Moore said about this, about how, one crocodile came out of the water, it wasn't meant to, and they all went crazy, obviously, protect Roger Moore. The bio chase is absolutely brilliant. The hunting through the poppy fields is really wonderful. The bus chase sequence, it's all good fun. It's nothing like epic or grand or like the best boat chase you'll ever see or the best bus chase or whatever, but it's all really, really good, high quality stuff. But weird enough, the highlight for me, and I think one of the reasons why I love this film so much, is its atmosphere, its tone, its taste, its mise-en-scène, its style. This film has a very much a voodoo presence. Now, I'm just going to say this right off the bat. Voodoo is something I don't believe in, but I respect it enough and maybe slightly fear it enough just to leave it alone. Let those who wish to preach it or worship it, just I support you, or just for me, it slightly freaks me out, I'm not going to lie. And I think that's why Live and Let Die works. It has such a rich I think the voodoo in it gives it this dimension of slightly unnervedness and sort of a real sort of flavour, an extra sense of danger, such as use of the Baron Samedi character in this film. I think that just adds to the whole sort of mystique of the film. That's a very good word of actually describing it, the mystique of this film. I think all of it, from its iconography to the scarecrows to the cards, it's just terrific, and it just adds, I think, to the whole fear. And there's this underlining fear in Live and Let Die, which just I think really works the film. And again, might be mediocre, but at least it's got its own style of flavour of mediocre. But again, everyone, you knew this was coming if you know me from a while. I've always said, and I said this in the From Russia with Love review. when Bond is on a train, I don't know what it is, but it just, to me, is some of the best stuff ever. Bond on a train, fight sequence or just anything, it's always, I think, some of the best ever. And this film is no exception. The end fight sequence with Tee is, without a doubt, terrific. Just brilliant. It's lovely, it's small, but it's so magnificently done. And of all scenes I rewatch, sort of Live and Let Die, apart from Crocodile Farm, it's straight to the Bond versus Tee train fight sequence at the end. So well done, so brilliant done. I love it when Bond is on a train. Oh, so good. But everybody, that's really sort of the good point. Let's talk about the characters right now. Now, we'll get to Bond in a minute. Let's just go through the MI6 regulars. Obviously, Desmond Llewellyn is not in this film. I still don't know why, but he's very much mentioned a lot. You got M and you got Moneypenny, which are, they just have very small sequences, but hey, it's memorable. It's a nice, helpful way. Them being in the scene that introduces Roger Moore's James Bond really does help us sort of ease in with the character and this new style of Bond. Really well done. I've got to talk about Yaphet Kotto. Rest in peace, sir. You did an amazing villain, I have to say. You did this very calm and collective villain. Then when you had to be Mr. Big, you were like this really cool version of what the sort of gangster would be. And then when you had to start getting a bit unhinged and angry, you saw that side of you. And then you trying to control it. And then at the end, when you go full psycho, just absolutely wonderful. Just spot on. I love, Dr. Kananga as... He is one of my favourite Bond villains. He's nothing like special or grand, but I just really do love Dr. Kananga. I think he has so much personality and character to him, so really, really awesome when it comes to that. As I've mentioned previously, Tee is one of my favourite henchmen in the whole Bond franchise. I think certainly with his hook, so I'm going to just sort of do like the thing there, sort of, let me just get it there, yeah. As a kid, me and my friends, pretending if one of us was Tee, pretending we got the hook, hey, and all that stuff. We love Tee. Tee was such a cool character. He's one of the best henchmen ever in the Bond franchise, in my opinion, hands down. I love Tee, such character and awesome. Whisper's also quite cool, but little shout out to Whisper there. But everybody, before we get to Roger Moore, I'm going to say it here and say it loud and say it proud. We finally have an awesome Felix Leiter. Yes, we do. Finally, after how many films, we got Felix Leiter done right. He's interesting. He's equal to Bond. He does stuff in the film. He doesn't just go, oh, James, you're so magnificent and fantastic. Oh, it's so terrific to see a fantastic and finally a good version of Felix Leiter. It's only taken how long, everybody? But Live and Let Die did it. And of course, quickly before we get on to Bond again, I'm still keeping you waiting, everybody, for my thoughts on Roger Moore. We have the Bond girls. We got Rosie Carver. Really interesting character, actually. A lot of people say just a bit one note and not that interesting. I disagree. I think, from the outset, she's obviously a bad guy. But she really does believe in the Voodoo religion in this film, like so many others. And I think that adds to her character because to her, it's so much more. And there's so much, I think, an interesting thing going there. It wasn't really used that much. I think it could have been used a lot more. But obviously, the main Bond girl, the still incredibly stunning Jane Seymour, and this is her first film role, Solitaire. Again, everybody, my point, Bond women are not just bimbos. They are really interesting, in-depth characters. And this is a girl who is trapped, trying to survive, and she learns through Bond to be more independent, stronger, more powerful. Even though Bond does take advantage and do that stuff, but which is by today's standards completely wrong, but we're just going to accept that's a thing of the times and it's the Roger Moore style. But Solitaire was a fantastic character. He is definitely one of the best. And I think so many of us in the Bond community, we look back on the character of Solitaire and Jane Seymour very fondly. She's been such a great advocate of the Bond franchise and supporter. Really, really apparently nice and kind in real life, which is always great to hear. Just terrific. But everybody, Roger Moore as James Bond, we have a new style. Obviously, Roger Moore's style is always much, if you will, summed up in, this is a fantasy. You must not laugh at it, you must laugh with it. It is over the top. I will say my great one-liner puns, and I love a good Roger Moore one-liner, and this film has plenty. But what I like about Roger Moore's performance in this one is it's sort of like a halfway point between the Sean Connery style, weird enough, and the Roger Moore, because you've got that very much over the top, very much laugh with me, not at me, Roger Moore style. But you have got that slight more dangerous side that Roger Moore sometimes shows in his movies. Doesn't show all the time, depends on the film. And they marry really well. I think Roger Moore in this film as Bond is fantastic. I love Roger Moore in this film. He's so fantastic, so brilliant. He really is absolutely stand out. I think after the faffle of George Lazenby and then Sean Connery coming back, only doing one, and they finally managed to get Roger Moore. He is the man who is basically going to allow the franchise to continue going forward, to carry on. You know, a Bond that's going to last more than one film. He's a great stabling thing, and he does a great job. He's trying to make the film and the character his own, which is really, really great. Some things I'm glad they brought back eventually, like the vodka martinis, eventually smoking cigarettes instead of cigars. But hey, it's nothing really to, complain about anything. He is terrific in this film, and I think the film really works well with him. I think this has, without a doubt, one of the best sort of openers for a new actor to play James Bond. Live and Let Die, it might not be one of the all greats when it comes to the massive spectacle, but the film has so much character, so much interest to it, so many great sections that I really like, and I think Live and Let Die really succeeds really well in its characters. I've just always really liked Live and Let Die. It's been one of my absolute favourites overall. I really have always just loved this film. I would strongly recommend this Bond film to any Bond fan, always to watch again and again. And actually, I would also recommend it to those who are not maybe the biggest Bond fans to give a watch, because I think there's so much interesting stuff here, they'll get enjoyed either way. But everybody, that's just my, opinions about it. I want to know, what's your opinions about it? Do you like Live and Let Die as much as me? Do you not like it as much? I want to know. Comment down below. Tell me what you think about this. As always, everybody, my name's Henry Stevens, and this has been Some Bond Geek Talks About. Goodbye.